The sound of the heavy oak gavel didn't echo as loudly as her voice. When Elara Vance looked the alphaking in the eye and said, "I accept," the entire High Court of the Moonstone Pack froze. King Kaelen thought breaking their fated bond in public would set him free to marry his high-born mistress, Seraphina. He thought Elara would beg. He thought she would break. But he didn't realize that Elara wasn't just his rejected mate. She was the only thing keeping his beast sane. Watch what happens when a weak Omega walks away, and the most powerful Alpha in the world falls to his knees in agony. This isn't just a breakup. It's the fall of a king. It was a Tuesday morning, specifically November 14th, when the Grand Hall of the Moonstone Pack was filled to capacity. The air was thick, smelling of rain and aggressive pheromones. This wasn't a celebration. It was a trial. Elara Vance stood in the center of the obsidian floor. She was small, her brown hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing a simple gray dress that had seen better days. She looked out of place among the velvet robes and silk suits of the council members. To anyone looking at her, she was just an Omega, a frantic weak link in the strongest pack in the Northern Hemisphere. Sitting on the raised throne of velvet and gold was him, King Kaelen Thorne. He looked like a god carved from marble. His dark hair fell over eyes that were currently a cold, steel gray. He didn't look at Elara with love. He looked at her with exhaustion. Beside him, draped in red silk that cost more than Elara's entire life earnings, sat Seraphina Cross. She was the daughter of the Beta Prime, a warrior wolf, tall, blonde, and everything a Luna was supposed to be. Elara Vance, High Elder Marcus boomed from the side, reading from a parchment. "You have been summoned before the High Council regarding the matter of the royal mating bond." Elara's hands trembled slightly, but she clasped them behind her back to hide it. "I am here, Elder Marcus. King Kaelen has filed a formal grievance," Marcus continued, his voice void of sympathy. "He claims that your wolf is dormant, your lineage is too weak to bear royal heirs, and your presence in the pack weakens the Alpha's authority. Do you contest these claims?" The murmurs in the crowd were like bees buzzing. "She's a charity case. I heard she can't even shift." "Seraphina is the true queen." Elara looked up, locking eyes with Kaelen. For 3 years she had been his fated mate. For 3 years he had hidden her away in the guest house, visiting her only when his rut demanded it, but never claiming her, never marking her, never letting the world know she belonged to him. He had kept her a dirty secret while he paraded Seraphina around as his intended. "Kaelen," Elara said softly, breaking protocol. "Is this what you want? A public trial? You could have just spoken to me." Kaelen's jaw tightened. He leaned forward, his alpha aura rolling off him in suffocating waves. "I spoke to you last night, Elara. I told you to leave the city. You refused. You forced my hand." "I refused because I am your mate," Elara said, her voice shaking but gaining strength. "The moon goddess chose me." Seraphina laughed, a tinkling, cruel sound. "The moon goddess makes mistakes, sweetie. Look at you. You're a mouse trying to mate with a lion. Kaelen needs a queen, not a pet. Silence." Kaelen commanded, though his tone toward Seraphina was gentle. He stood up, towering over the court. The silence was instant. "Elara," Kaelen said, his voice deep and resonating off the stone walls. "This isn't about cruelty. It is about duty. The Northern Alliance is threatening war. I need a strong alliance with the Southern Pax. Seraphina's father commands their armies. Marrying her secures the safety of thousands." He walked down the steps of the dais, stopping just a few feet from Elara. He smelled of cedar and rain, a scent that used to calm her, but now just made her nauseous. "I cannot have a weak Luna," Kaelen stated coldly. "My beast rejects you. I reject you." The gasps in the room were audible. A public rejection was rare. It was agonizing. It was usually a death sentence for the wolf being rejected. Kaelen took a deep breath, preparing the formal incantation that would sever the spiritual cord connecting their souls. "I, King Kaelen Thorn, Alpha of the Moonstone Pack and King of the Lycans, reject you, Elara Vance, as my mate and Luna." He waited. The court waited. They expected Elara to fall to the floor screaming. They expected her to beg, to grab his leg, to cry out in the agony of the bond shattering. Seraphina was already smirking, inspecting her manicured nails. But Elara didn't scream. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the sharp, jagged tear in her chest. It felt like a hot knife slicing through her heart. But beneath the pain, something else woke up, something ancient. Elara opened her eyes. They weren't brown anymore. For a split second they flashed a brilliant, blinding violet. The silence stretched for 10 seconds, 20 seconds. Kaelen frowned. Why wasn't she crying? Why wasn't she begging? He felt a dull ache in his chest, the beginning of the severance, but he pushed it down. Elara took a step forward. She didn't bow. She didn't tremble. She looked taller. "You speak of duty, Kaelen," Elara said, her voice clear and ringing like a bell. "You speak of strength, but true strength isn't about armies or alliances. It's about loyalty, and you have none." "Watch your tone, Omega," Seraphina hissed, standing up. Elara ignored her completely, keeping her eyes locked on the king. "You think I am weak, because I do not shift. You think I am a burden, because I do not boast. But you forgot one thing, Alpha. A king is nothing without the favor of the moon." Elara raised her chin. "I, Elara Vance, daughter of nobody that you care about." She paused, a sad smile touching her lips. "I accept your rejection." Crack. The sound wasn't physical, but everyone in the room heard it. It sounded like a massive tree trunk snapping in a storm. It was the sound of the faded bond shattering instantly. Usually, when a bond is rejected, the pain is shared. But Elara had accepted it so fully, so instantly, that the magical backlash didn't hit her. It ricocheted. "Arg!" Kaelen suddenly doubled over, clutching his chest. "Kaelen!" Seraphina shrieked, rushing down the stairs. The King of Lycans dropped to one knee, gasping for air. His skin turned ashen gray. He felt as if someone had reached into his chest and ripped out his lungs. But it wasn't just pain. It was silence. The constant, thrumming power of his alpha wolf, the beast that gave him his strength, had suddenly gone quiet. "What did you do?" Kaelen wheezed, looking up at Elara with wide, terrified eyes. My wolf, I can't feel him." Elara stood calmly, the gray dress looking almost regal now. She looked down at him with pity. "You rejected your anchor, Kaelen. Did you really think the moon goddess gave you a mate just for breeding? I was the balance to your chaos. I was the shield to your rage." She turned her back on him. "Seize her!" Serafina screamed, pointing a shaking finger at Elara. "She used witchcraft! She hurt the king! Guards!" 4 large alpha guards, headed by Commander Titus, rushed toward Elara. "Don't touch me," Elara said. "She didn't shout. She just spoke." And the guards stopped. They didn't want to stop. But their wolves forced them to freeze. A command had been issued, and it carried an authority that outweighed even the king's. Elara looked over her shoulder at Kaelen, who was now coughing up black blood onto the pristine obsidian floor. "I am leaving, Kaelen," she said. "You wanted Serafina? You have her. You wanted the Southern Alliance? Go get it. But remember this moment. Remember that when you broke me, you broke yourself." Elara walked toward the massive double doors of the courtroom. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, terrified of the aura radiating from the small woman. As she pushed the doors open, the sunlight hit her silhouette. She paused and whispered, though the acoustics of the room carried it to everyone. "And by the way, I'm not an Omega." She stepped out into the daylight, and the doors slammed shut with a deafening boom, leaving the Alpha King writhing on the floor in a pool of his own regret. The heavy oak doors of the grand hall slammed shut, sealing Elara outside, but the chaos inside was just beginning. Dr. Eris, the pack's head physician, sprinted across the polished floor, his medical bag sliding across the obsidian tiles. Kaelen was convulsing. The Alpha King, a man who had survived wars against rogue armies and challenged bears with his bare hands, was curled in a fetal position, clawing at his own chest. "His heart rate is erratic," Dr. Eris shouted, pressing 2 fingers to Kaelen's jugular. "Get the beta! Get the energy suppressors!" Serafina stood frozen near the throne. She didn't rush to Kaelen. She looked at the door where Elara had exited, her face twisted, not in concern for her fiancé, but in pure, unadulterated fear. She cursed him. Serafina whispered, her voice trembling. "That Omega witch did something to him." "She didn't do anything!" Elder Marcus snapped, stepping down from the podium. He looked at the writhes of the king with grim realization. The bond, it wasn't just rejected, it was severed from the root. Kaelen didn't just reject a mate, he rejected a true anchor. "Get him to the infirmary!" Commander Titus barked, hoisting the king's heavy frame over his shoulder. Kaelen was limp, his eyes rolled back, white foam gathering at the corners of his mouth. Meanwhile, 3 miles away, the atmosphere was entirely different. Elara walked down the winding asphalt road, leading out of the Moonstone territory. It was raining now, a cold November drizzle that should have chilled her to the bone. But Elara felt hot. Her skin was buzzing with static energy. She reached the border marker, a large stone pillar engraved with the Moonstone crest. She stopped. Waiting on the other side of the border, idling on the wet shoulder of the highway, was a cavalcade of 3 matte black Mercedes G-Wagons. They were unmarked, tinted so dark the windows looked like ink. As Elara approached, the back door of the middle vehicle opened. A man stepped out. He was massive, standing nearly 7 feet tall, wearing a tailored black suit that strained against his muscles. He held a large black umbrella. He walked over to Elara, bowing his head low, a sign of immense respect. "Princess," the giant man said, his voice a deep rumble, "we have been waiting." Elara let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for 3 years. "Hello, Silas. I assume my brother sent you?" King Valerius was displeased when he felt the disturbance in the ley lines. Silas replied, holding the umbrella over her head to shield her from the rain. He knew the moment the bond snapped. He is preparing the war room. Elara shook her head as she climbed into the leather interior of the SUV. "Tell Valerius to stand down. I don't want a war. I just want to go home." Silas closed the door gently. Inside the car, it smelled of expensive leather and peppermint. Elara leaned back against the seat, watching the trees of the Moonstone Pack blur past the window. "Did they suspect?" Silas asked from the front passenger seat. "No," Elara whispered, touching the spot on her neck where a mating mark should have been. "They thought I was a wolfless Omega. They thought my silence was weakness. They never realized I was suppressing my aura to keep them safe." "To keep him safe," Silas corrected gently. Elara looked away. "He didn't deserve it, Silas. I held back my alpha bloodline so his own wolf wouldn't feel threatened by a superior predator. I made myself small so he could feel big, and he threw me away like garbage." Silas turned around, his eyes glowing a fierce amber. "The Blood Moon Pact does not forgive insults to the royal family, Princess. By tonight the world will know that the Omega they mocked is the heir to the Northern Throne." Elara closed her eyes. "Drive, Silas. Just drive." Back in the Moonstone Infirmary, Kaelen woke up screaming. "Where is she?" he roared, thrashing against the hospital bed restraints. "Calm down, Alpha." Dr. Aris pleaded, injecting a sedative into the IV line. "Your vitals are critical. Your wolf—" "Kaelen, listen to me. Your wolf has gone into deep regression." Kaelen froze. He tried to reach for the beast inside his mind, the source of his power, his healing, his aggression. There was nothing, just a dark, empty void. He looked at his hands. They were trembling. He felt cold, human cold. "What does that mean?" Kaelen whispered, his voice cracking. "It means," Elder Marcus said, standing in the doorway with a grim expression, "that until you fix this, you are no longer an alpha. You are effectively human. And with the Southern Alliance arriving tomorrow for the engagement party, we are in grave danger." The news of Kaelen's condition was supposed to be a state secret. But in the world of wolves, secrets bleed like fresh wounds. By the next morning, whispers had spread through the territory. The king is broken. The king has no wolf. Seraphina Cross was pacing in the Alpha's private office. She looked impeccable in a white designer dress, but her eyes were manic. "You have to get up, Kaelen," she hissed at the man sitting behind the desk. Kaelen looked terrible. Dark circles bruised the skin under his eyes. He was shivering, wrapped in a thick, wool blanket, despite the fireplace roaring nearby. He looked at Serafina, really looked at her. For the first time in months, without the haze of the mating bond puling him toward Elara, a pull he had fought and rejected, he saw Serafina clearly. She was beautiful, yes, but she was cold. There was no warmth in her scent, only expensive perfume and ambition. "I can't just—" "Get up, Serafina," Kaelen rasped. "My body feels like lead. I tried to shift this morning. I broke a rib just trying to force the change." "My father is here," Serafina snapped. "Alpha Heston, the general of the Southern armies. If he sees you like this, weak, pathetic, he won't sign the treaty. He'll invade. He'll take the Moonstone territory for himself." "Is that what you're worried about?" Kaelen laughed bitterly. "The territory? Not the fact that I am dying? I am worried about my future," Serafina shouted. "I didn't spend 3 years waiting for you to dump that trash Omega just to become the wife of a cripple." The words hung in the air. Kaelen's eyes narrowed. "Get out." "Excuse me?" "I said get out." Kaelen stood up, swaying slightly. He grabbed a crystal tumbler from his desk and hurled it at the wall. It shattered, shards raining down. "Get out of my office," Serafina sneered, smoothing her dress. "Fine, but you better pull yourself together before dinner. Daddy doesn't like weaklings." She slammed the door. Kaelen collapsed back into his chair, putting his head in his hands. The silence in his mind was deafening. He reached for the bond again, the tether that used to connect him to Elara. Even when he hated it, even when he fought it, it had always been there. A warm hum in the back of his mind. A safety net. Now, it was just a ragged, bleeding stump. Elara. He remembered her face in the courtroom. The violet flash in her eyes. "I'm not an Omega." "Who are you?" Kaelen whispered to the empty room. Suddenly, the door to his office opened without a knock. It wasn't Serafina. It was Commander Titus, his beta and best friend. Titus looked pale. "Alpha," Titus said, forgetting that Kaelen couldn't sense him coming anymore. "We have a problem at the border." "The Southern Alliance?" Kaelen asked, rubbing his temples. "No," Titus swallowed hard. "It's the Blood Moon Pack." Kaelen's blood ran cold. The Blood Moon Pack was a myth to some, a nightmare to others. They were the oldest lineage of Lycans, residing in the frozen mountains of the far north. They didn't involve themselves in pack politics. They were executioners. They were royalty. "What do they want?" Kaelen asked. "They sent an emissary," Titus said, handing Kaelen a black envelope sealed with red wax. The crest on the wax was a wolf devouring a son. "They are demanding reparations." "Reparations for what?" Kaelen ripped the envelope open. His human fingers fumbled with the thick paper. He pulled out a single sheet of heavy cardstock. The message was handwritten in elegant, sharp calligraphy. "To the usurper Kaelen Thorne, you have broken the sacred law. You have harmed a member of the royal bloodline. The rejection is accepted, but the insult is not. You have 48 hours to abdicate your throne and surrender yourself to the High Council for judgment. If you refuse, the blood moon will descend upon your lands. Signed, Valerius Vance, King of the Blood Moon Lycans. Kaelen stared at the name. Vance. The room spun. He grabbed the edge of the desk to steady himself. Elara Vance. Valerius Vance. Oh my God, Kaelen whispered, the realization hitting him harder than any physical blow. She's not an Omega, she's his sister. She's the princess of the Blood Moon. Titus looked at the letter, his face losing all color. Alpha. If Elara is a royal Lycan, that means she outranked you. She outranked all of us. And you. I rejected a royal. Kaelen finished, his voice hollow. I tried to make a queen into a mistress. If King Valerius is coming, Titus said, his voice dropping to a whisper, we are dead. The Southern Alliance won't save us. They'll run. Where is she? Kaelen demanded, a sudden spark of frantic energy returning to him. Where is Elara? Our scouts tracked the black SUVs, Titus reported. They headed north. They crossed the bridge into the neutral zone an hour ago. They are heading for the sanctuary. Kaelen stood up. He grabbed his car keys. Alpha, you can't, Titus warned. You are sick. You have no wolf. I don't need a wolf to beg, Kaelen said, his eyes burning with a mix of desperation and terror. Prepare the car, Titus. I have to catch her before she reaches the north. If she crosses into Blood Moon territory, I can never reach her again. And the dinner with Seraphina's father? Titus asked. Kaelen looked at the engagement ring sitting on his desk, the ring he was supposed to give Seraphina that night. He swiped it off the table and into the trash can. Burn the dinner, Kaelen growled. We're going to chase the queen. The Blackwater Bridge was a massive steel structure spanning the roaring river that separated the Moonstone territory from the neutral zone. It was a no-man's land. No pack law applied here. Rain lashed against the windshield of Kaelen's Range Rover. He was driving like a madman, his hands gripping the leather wheel so tight his knuckles were white. Without his wolf's enhanced reflexes, the speed was terrifying. The road was slick, the curves sharp. Twice he almost spun out into the guardrail, but he didn't lift his foot off the gas. There! Titus shouted from the passenger seat, pointing ahead. Through the curtain of rain, the red taillights of the three black SUVs were visible. They were moving at a steady, regal pace. Alpha, what is the plan? Titus asked, his voice strained. We can't fight them. That is the Royal Guard. One of them could take out our entire patrol. I just need to talk to her, Kaelen gritted out. I need to explain. Explain what? Titus muttered. That you didn't know she was a princess? That only makes it worse, Kaelen. Kaelen ignored him. He floored the accelerator, the engine roaring as he pulled into the oncoming lane to overtake the convoy. It was a suicide move. He swerved in front of the lead SUV and slammed on the brakes. Screeching tires pierced the sound of the storm. The lead SUV halted just inches from Kaelen's bumper. The entire convoy came to a stop in the middle of the bridge. Kaelen didn't wait. He threw his door open and stumbled out into the rain. He was soaked instantly, his expensive suit clinging to his shivering frame. He felt weak, nauseous, but adrenaline pushed him forward. "Elara!" he screamed, his voice tearing against the wind. "Elara, please!" The doors of the SUVs opened. But it wasn't Elara who stepped out. 6 guards, including the giant Silas, emerged. They moved with a synchronized, lethal grace that terrified Kaelen. They didn't transform. They didn't have to. The sheer pressure of their alpha auras hit Kaelen like a physical wall. Usually, Kaelen could withstand this. He was an alpha king. But now, he was hollow. The pressure brought him to his knees on the wet asphalt. "Stay back!" Silas boomed, stepping forward. "You have violated the safety of the princess. This is an act of war." "I am not here for war," Kaelen gasped, trying to stand but failing. He looked pathetic, mud on his knees, hair plastered to his forehead. "I need to speak to my mate." "She is not your mate," Silas growled. "You made sure of that." Silas raised a hand, and Kaelen saw the glint of a silver-edged blade. "Wait." The voice was soft, barely a whisper over the rain, but it stopped the guards instantly. The rear door of the middle SUV opened. An umbrella was deployed. Elara stepped out. She looked different. She had changed out of her gray rags into a black trench coat. Her hair was loose, blowing in the wind. She didn't look like the girl who cleaned the packhouse floors. She looked like a queen. She walked past her guards, signaling them to lower their weapons. She stopped 5 feet from Kaelen. She didn't offer him a hand. She looked down at him with an expression that hurt more than hatred, indifference. "Elara," Kaelen choked out, crawling slightly closer. "I didn't know. If I had known who you were—" "That is exactly the problem, Kaelen," Elara said, her voice devoid of emotion. "You only care about value. If you knew I was a princess, you would have loved me, you would have paraded me around. But because you thought I was nothing, you treated me like nothing. I was protecting the pack," Kaelen argued, desperation seeping into his tone. "The Southern Alliance." "The Southern Alliance is a joke." Elara cut him off. "My brother Valerius could crush the South in a day. If you had just trusted the bond, if you had just trusted me, you would have had the most powerful ally in the world. You traded a diamond for a piece of glass." Kaelen reached out, his fingers brushing the toe of her boot. "I can fix this. Come back. I'll make you Luna. I'll banish Serafina. Just, please, the silence. It's killing me. My wolf is gone." Elara looked at his hand on her boot, then stepped back. "Your wolf isn't gone, Kaelen," she said quietly. "He's hiding. He's ashamed of you. You broke the one law that nature gave us. Cherish your mate." She turned around to walk back to the car. "I loved you," Kaelen screamed, a lie that he desperately wanted to be true in that moment. Elara paused. She didn't look back. "No, Kaelen," she whispered. "You love the idea of power, and now you have neither." She got into the car. The door slammed shut. Silas looked at Kaelen one last time, a sneer on his face. "If you follow us past this bridge, I will kill you. That is a promise." The convoy drove around Kaelen's stalled car, splashing him with dirty water as they sped off toward the north. Kaelen was left alone on the bridge, sobbing into the asphalt, while the rain washed away the scent of the only woman who could have saved him. The drive back to the Moonstone Pack house was silent. Titus drove. Kaelen sat in the passenger seat, staring blankly out the window. He was shivering violently now, fever setting in. The separation from a true anchor was physically dismantling his immune system. They arrived at the pack house gates at 8 p.m. "Something is wrong," Titus said, slowing the car down. The gates were open. The guards who usually manned the booth were missing. In their place stood soldiers wearing uniforms of deep crimson, the color of the Southern Alliance. "Why are Heston's men at the gate?" Kaelen mumbled, his vision blurry. "Trap," Titus hissed. He slammed the car into reverse, but it was too late. 2 more vehicles blocked the exit behind them. "Get out of the car!" a voice boomed. Kaelen stumbled out, supported by Titus. They were immediately surrounded by a dozen armed warriors. And walking through the crowd, clapping his hands slowly, was Alpha Heston. He was an older wolf, scarred and gray, with eyes like a shark. Beside him, clinging to his arm and smiling like she had just won the lottery, was Seraphina. "Welcome home, Your Highness," Seraphina cooed. "What is the meaning of this?" Titus shouted, stepping in front of Kaelen. "This is an act of treason! Stand down!" "Treason?" Heston laughed, a dry, rasping sound. "I don't think so. The council met an hour ago. They invoked Article 15 of the Alliance Treaty." Kaelen looked up, his eyes glassy. "Article 15! In the event of the Alpha's incapacitation," Seraphina recited gleefully, "the bonded partner or the highest-ranking ally assumes temporary control of the pack to ensure safety." "I am not incapacitated," Kaelen roared, trying to summon his Alpha command. But his voice lacked the power. It sounded like a regular man shouting. The soldiers didn't even flinch. "Look at you," Heston sneered, walking closer and poking Kaelen hard in the chest. "You have no aura. You smell like a sick human. You rejected your mate and lost your wolf. You are weak, Kaelen, and wolves do not follow weakness." Heston turned to the soldiers. "Take Titus to the holding cells. He is loyal to the old regime." "No!" Kaelen lunged at Heston, swinging a fist. It was pathetic. Heston caught Kaelen's fist effortlessly, then backhanded him across the face. Kaelen hit the gravel hard, tasting blood. He tried to get up, but a heavy boot pinned him to the ground. Seraphina walked over, her heels clicking on the pavement. She looked down at her former fiancé. "You really should have just married me when you had the chance," she whispered, leaning down. "We could have ruled together. But you had to go chasing after that little rat Omega. Now my father is the Alpha of the Moonstone Pack. And me? I'm finally the queen I was born to be." You planned this," Kaelen wheezed. "We adapted," Seraphina corrected. "We knew you were unstable. The moment you rejected Elara, we knew you would fall. We just hastened the process." "Lock him in the silver cage," Heston commanded. The silver cage was a dungeon designed for rogue alphas. The bars were made of pure silver, which burned werewolf skin on contact. "You can't do this!" Titus screamed as he was dragged away. "The pack won't stand for it!" "The pack will do what they are told," Heston replied calmly. "They are scared, and I am strong." Two guards grabbed Kaelen by the arms and dragged him toward the basement levels. Kaelen was too weak to fight. As they dragged him through the grand hallway, the same hallway where he had been king just this morning, he saw the portraits of his ancestors staring down at him. He was thrown into the cell. Ideally, the silver bars wouldn't hurt a human, but Kaelen still had lichen blood, even if the spirit was dormant. As his skin brushed the metal, it sizzled. He screamed, curling into the corner of the damp, dark cell. Hours passed. Or maybe days. Kaelen lost track of time in the darkness. He was feverish, starving, and alone. Then, a noise. A small radio that one of the guards had left on a table outside the cell crackled to life. It was a news broadcast from the Werewolf Underground Network. Breaking news. The Moonstone Pack has officially been absorbed by the Southern Alliance under the command of Alpha Heston. Former King Kaelen Thorne is reported to be critically ill. Kaelen closed his eyes, accepting his death. But then, the broadcast continued. However, reports are coming in from the north. The Blood Moon Pack has mobilized. King Valerius has issued a statement declaring the takeover of Moonstone illegal. And sources say that Princess Elara Vance has petitioned the High Council for a challenge of blood. Kaelen's eyes snapped open. A challenge of blood. It was the oldest law in the book. A royal heir could challenge a usurper for control of a territory. But it required single combat. Elara was coming back. But she wasn't coming back for him. She was coming for war. The morning of November 16th broke over the Moonstone Valley with a suffocating heaviness. The sky was a bruised shade of purple and slate gray. The clouds hanging so low they seemed to scrape the tops of the pine trees. There were no birds singing. The forest held its breath. In the center of the packed territory lay the Circle of Judgment, an ancient sunken amphitheater carved from granite. Usually this place was reserved for sacred rites. Today it was a slaughterhouse. The stone bleachers were packed to capacity, but the seating arrangement told the story of a conquered people. On the east side, shouting, drinking, and jeering, sat the soldiers of the Southern Alliance. They wore crimson armbands and laughed with the arrogance of victors. On the west side, huddled together in silence, were the citizens of the Moonstone Pack. Mothers clutched their children. Elders stared at their feet. They looked broken. They had watched their king fall, their beta imprisoned, and their home occupied in less than 48 hours. In the center of the sandy pit stood Alpha Heston. He was a terrifying figure. At 50 years old, he was still a mountain of muscle, his body covered in battle scars that twisted his skin into a roadmap of violence. He had stripped to the waist, his torso gleaming with oil to make him harder to grapple. He paced the circle like a caged tiger, swinging a massive double-bladed battle axe. "Where is she?" Heston bellowed, his voice echoing off the stone walls. He looked up at the sun, which was struggling to peek through the clouds. "The sun is cresting the tree line! If the little princess doesn't show in 5 minutes, I declare forfeit. The Moonstone territory is mine by default." High above in the royal box, the seat that had belonged to Kaelen just 2 days ago, sat Seraphina Cross. She was dressed in a gown of deep red velvet, holding a crystal goblet of wine. She looked down at the arena with a bored expression. "She ran away, Father," Serafina called out, her voice amplified by the acoustics of the pit. "She's a coward. She ran when Kaelen rejected her, and she's running now." Serafina took a sip of wine, smiling. "Let's just execute Titus and be done with it." Heston laughed, a guttural sound. "Bring out the prisoner!" 2 Southern guards dragged a beaten and bloody Titus into the arena. They forced him to his knees in the sand. Titus looked up, his one eye swollen shut, but his spirit unbroken. "She's coming," Titus wheezed, blood bubbling on his lips. "And when she gets here, Heston, you're going to wish you were dead." Heston raised the axe. "She's late." He prepared to swing. The crowd screamed. Thump. It wasn't a sound. It was a vibration. The wine in Serafina's glass rippled. The loose pebbles in the arena danced. Thump. Thump. It grew louder. Rhythmic. Heavy. It was the sound of 1,000 boots hitting the earth in perfect unison. The southern gates of the arena, massive structures made of iron-reinforced oak, suddenly groaned. The metal hinges screamed under immense pressure. Boom! The gates didn't just open, they exploded. Wood splintered into shrapnel, flying into the stands. The Southern soldiers jumped to their feet, weapons drawn, but they froze at the sight before them. Emerging from the dust and smoke was a phalanx of warriors. But these weren't ordinary wolves. They were the Blood Moon Vanguard. They stood nearly 7 feet tall in their human forms, encased in matte black steel armor that absorbed the light. Their faces were hidden behind visors shaped like snarling wolf muzzles. They didn't scream. They didn't chant. They marched in a terrifying, suffocating silence. They flowed into the arena, forming a perfect shield wall, pushing the Southern soldiers back without even drawing their swords. The sheer pressure of their collective alpha aura was so dense that several people in the front rows fainted. Then the ranks parted. Walking down the center aisle was Elara Vance. She looked nothing like a warrior. She wore no armor. She carried no weapon. She was dressed in a simple, flowing white tunic and loose linen trousers. Her feet were bare against the frozen, muddy ground. Her hair was braided back tightly, exposing her face, a face that held no fear, only a cold, terrifying calm. Flanking her were 2 giants. On her left, her brother, King Valerius, his eyes glowing gold. On her right, the massive bodyguard Silas, holding a broadsword that looked like it weighed 100 pounds. Elara stopped 10 feet from Heston. She looked at the axe in his hand, then up at his face. "I am here, Heston," she said. She didn't shout, yet her voice projected to the furthest seat in the arena, clear as a bell. "Release my beta," Heston sneered, though a flicker of doubt crossed his eyes as he looked at the black-armored soldiers surrounding the pit. "You brought an army to a duel? Typical woman. You can't fight your own battles." "My army is here to ensure the Southern Alliance respects the outcome," Elara replied smoothly. "And to ensure you don't try to run when you realize you can't win." "Run?" Heston barked a laugh, regaining his bravado. "From you? A little Omega girl who cleans floors?" He spat in the sand near her bare feet. "I have killed alphas twice your size, girl. Go home. Go play princess, or I will mount your head on my wall next to Kaelen's." Elara didn't flinch at the spittle. She stepped forward, entering the circle of judgment. "By the laws of the ancient council," Elara announced, her voice turning steely, "I, Elara Vance, Princess of the Blood Moon, challenge you for the alpha title of this territory. A challenge of blood, to the death, or to submission." "Accepted," Heston roared. He threw his axe aside. "I don't need steel to kill you. I'll tear your throat out with my teeth." Heston crouched, his muscles rippling. "Shift!" The sound of bones breaking filled the arena. Heston's transformation was violent and grotesque. His skin tore open as thick, matted brown fur erupted. His jaw elongated, snapping into a snout filled with yellow, jagged teeth. Within seconds, standing in the arena was a southern dire wolf, a monstrosity of nature. He was massive, easily standing 8 feet at the shoulder, drooling venomous saliva. The crowd gasped. A dire wolf was a killing machine. Heston let out a roar that shook the stadium walls. He scraped his claws against the ground, preparing to charge. Elara stood motionless. She looked tiny compared to the beast. A distinct murmur of terror went through the Moonstone citizens. "She's going to die," someone whispered. Elara closed her eyes. She took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of the rain, the fear of the crowd, and the arrogance of her enemy. "Do you know why I never shifted, Heston?" she asked softly, opening her eyes. They were no longer brown. They were 2 supernova explosions of violet light. "Because," she whispered, the air around her beginning to crackle with purple electricity, "my wolf doesn't fit in cages." Boom! A shockwave of pure energy blasted outward from Elara's body. It hit Heston like a physical hammer, knocking the massive direwolf backward onto his haunches. A blinding pillar of violet light consumed the center of the arena, shooting straight up into the clouds. The sky above swirled, mirroring the color on the ground. When the light faded, the silence in the arena was absolute. Standing where the small girl had been was a creature of legends, a creature that most wolves thought was extinct. She was colossal. Her shoulder height reached 10 feet, dwarfing even the dire wolf. Her fur was a pristine, shimmering white, but her paws, tail tip, and ears were dipped in a glowing, ethereal violet. Her eyes burned with an ancient royal power, a royal lichen. The apex predator, the queen of wolves. Heston, the massive direwolf who had looked so terrifying moments ago, now looked like a frightened puppy. He scrambled backward in the sand, his tail instinctively tucking between his legs. His biology was betraying him. Every cell in his body was screaming at him to submit to the superior predator. Submit. The command didn't come from her mouth. It echoed telepathically in the minds of every single person in the valley. It was a voice of pure authority, heavy and undeniable. But Heston was proud. And pride is a fatal flaw. Instead of rolling over, Heston snarled. He launched himself at the white wolf's throat, snapping his jaws. It was a mistake. Elara didn't even dodge. She moved with a speed that blurred the eye. She caught Heston in midair. Her massive jaws clamped down on the back of his neck. Crunch. The sound of the dire wolf's spine snapping was sickeningly loud. Elara didn't kill him. She whipped her head to the side, throwing the 8-foot beast across the arena like a rag doll. Heston smashed into the granite wall of the pit, sliding down in a heap. He shifted back into his human form instantly, his body broken, paralyzed from the neck down, gasping for air in the mud. It was over in 10 seconds. Elara stood over the arena, letting out a howl that wasn't a sound of war, but a sound of reclamation. It was beautiful and terrifying. She shifted back. Silas was there instantly, draping a heavy fur cloak over her shoulders before the mist of her transformation cleared. Elara walked over to Heston's paralyzed body. She looked down at him with zero pity. "The Moonstone Pack is under my protection," she declared, her gaze sweeping up to the Southern soldiers in the stands. "Any Southern soldier remaining within my borders in 1 hour will be hunted for sport. Leave. Now." The panic was instant. The Southern soldiers didn't wait for orders. They dropped their weapons, jumped over the bleachers, and ran for their vehicles. There was a stampede of fear. Elara turned her eyes to the royal box, to Seraphina. Seraphina was frozen. Her wine glass had shattered on the floor. Her face was pale as death. As she saw Elara begin to ascend the stone stairs toward the box, Seraphina's legs gave out. She fell to her knees. Elara walked up the steps, her bare feet silent on the stone. She entered the box. "Elara! Cousin! Please!" Seraphina sobbed, crawling forward and clutching at the hem of Elara's cloak. "He forced me. My father. He made me do it. I never wanted this." Elara looked down at the woman who had tormented her for 3 years, the woman who had called her a rat, the woman who had stolen her mate. "You were always a terrible liar, Seraphina," Elara said, her voice cold. "I can help you," Seraphina pleaded, snot running down her face, her elegance completely gone. "I know where the treasury keys are. I can be your beta. I can serve you." "You?" Elara tilted her head. "You are not a beta. You aren't even a Luna. You are a parasite." Elara gestured to 2 of her blood moon guards. "Remove her." "No! No, please!" Seraphina shrieked as the armored guards grabbed her arms. "Strip her of her pack marks," Elara commanded, turning her back on the crying woman. "Drive her to the edge of the neutral zone and leave her there. If she sets foot in Moonstone territory again, kill her." "You can't do this. I'm highborn," Seraphina screamed as she was dragged away. "I was supposed to be queen." Her screams faded as she was hauled out of the arena. Elara let out a long breath. She felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Titus. He had been released and healed by Dr. Eris. "Princess," Titus said, bowing his head in reverence. "The pack awaits your command." Elara looked at him. "Where is he, Titus?" Titus flinched. He knew who she meant. "The silver cage. Level 4. But, Elara, prepare yourself. The silver poisoning. It's bad." The air in the dungeon was cold and smelled of rust and ozone. The only sound was the drip of water from the ceiling. Elara walked down the long corridor alone. She had ordered her guards to wait at the entrance. This was a conversation that needed no audience. She reached the final cell. The heavy steel door had been blasted off its hinges by Valerius earlier to secure the area. Elara stepped inside. In the corner, curled up on a filthy pile of straw, was a heap of rags. The figure moved slightly as the light from the hallway hit him. Kaelen raised his head. Elara felt a sharp pang in her chest, but she pushed it down. Kaelen was unrecognizable. The man who had been the strongest alpha in the region was a skeleton. His skin was gray and covered in weeping burns from where he had touched the silver bars. His eyes, once a piercing steel gray, were cloudy and dim. He looked like a ghost. "Elara," he croaked. His voice was broken like gravel in a blender. He squinted, trying to focus. Is that you? Am I dead?" Elara knelt beside him, tucking her cloak around her legs to avoid the filth on the floor. "No, Kaelen, you are alive. Heston is defeated. The South has retreated." A sob racked Kaelen's body. He tried to crawl toward her, dragging his useless legs. "You came back. You came back for me." He reached out a shaking, burned hand to touch her face. Elara didn't pull away, but she didn't lean into it. She let his fingers graze her cheek. "I knew it." Kaelen wept, a desperate smile cracking his bloody lips. "I knew you still loved me. The bond, it's strong, isn't it?" "I'm sorry, Elara. I was a fool, but I've paid for it. Look at me. I've suffered." He looked into her violet eyes, searching for warmth. "But we can fix it. I'll heal. I'll be the king you deserve. We will rule together. You and me. Just like the fates wanted." Elara stared at him. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. She stood up slowly, brushing the dust from her knees. "Kaelen," she said softly. "Yes, my love," he whispered, hope shining in his eyes. "I didn't come back for you." Kaelen froze. The hope in his eyes shattered like glass. "What?" "I came back for the people," Elara said, her voice steady. "I came back for the mothers, the pups, the elders, who you failed to protect because you were too busy chasing political alliances. I came back because a queen does not let her subjects suffer." "But us," Kaelen stammered. "We are fated. You can't just walk away." "My wolf, he's gone, Elara, but if you accept me back, he might return. You are my only chance." Elara took a step back toward the door. "The bond is dead, Kaelen. You killed it in that courtroom. There is no resurrection for what you did." "Please," Kaelen begged, pulling himself across the stone floor, his fingernails scraping against the rock. "Don't leave me like this. I have nothing. I am nothing without you." "You are alive," Elara said, stopping in the doorway. "That is my gift to you. You will live." "I don't want to live without you." "You will," Elara corrected him. "I have appointed Titus as the Alpha of the Moonstone Pack. He will report to the Blood Moon Kingdom. The pack will flourish." She turned to look at him one last time. "You will be given a small cottage on the edge of the woods. You will work in the fields. You will not be an alpha. You will not be a king. You will be a man. That is torture, Kaelen screamed, tears streaming down his face. To see you, to see him in my seat, that is worse than death. Just kill me. Elara, please, have mercy and kill me. Elara's expression remained unreadable. Death is easy, Kaelen, she whispered. Living with your mistake? Waking up every day knowing you threw away a diamond for a stone? That is the true punishment. She turned and walked out of the cell. Elara! Kaelen screamed, his voice breaking into a primal sob that echoed through the empty dungeon. Elara, don't go! She didn't stop. She didn't look back. Elara walked up the spiral stairs, emerging from the darkness of the dungeon into the blinding light of the courtyard. The clouds had finally parted. The sun was shining on the snow-capped mountains. Her brother Valerius was waiting for her. Silas was waiting. Her people were waiting. Elara Vance, the rejected Omega who had been mocked and discarded, took a deep breath of the fresh, cold air. She was free. For the first time in her life, she wasn't defined by who she belonged to. She was the alpha of her own destiny. Okay, take a breath with me. In and out. Wow. Just wow. I honestly did not expect Elara to leave him like that. I thought for sure she was going to forgive him at the last second, but that ending? That was brutal. Death is easy. Living with your mistake is the punishment. That line gave me chills. Kaelen got exactly what he deserved. He has to live every single day watching someone else sit on his throne, knowing he threw away the most powerful woman in the world for a status symbol. It's the ultimate poetic justice. And Serafina becoming a rogue? Perfect. What did you guys think? Did Elara go too hard on him? Should she have given him a second chance? Or was Kaelen unforgivable? I really want to see your debates in the comments section. Are you Team Forgive or Team Revenge? If you enjoyed this roller coaster of a story, please smash that like button. If we get this video to 10,000 likes, I will write a sequel about Titus struggling to lead the pack, and maybe, just maybe, a new mysterious alpha male who comes to town and catches Elara's eye. You don't want to miss that. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you're the first to know when the next drama drops. Thanks for watching, and remember, never underestimate an Omega. See you next time.